Hey everyone, welcome. Baron here. As you may know, we are a short week and a half away from the new league, patch 3.25, Settlers of Kalguur, and GGG has been releasing daily teasers showing off new quality of life changes that we're going to see in the upcoming patch. The more impactful changes will be featured in the full reveal stream and patch notes coming on Thursday, but I wanted to round up all of the small to medium-sized changes that they've featured so far. I'm doing this a day or two in advance of patch notes to give me time to process the video, so I am likely going to miss at least one teaser before the patch notes, which I'm going to add in either the description or as a pinned comment of this video once they are known. I've included direct links to each of the individual teaser videos in the description if you want to see the originals. I'm going to go in chronological order from the earliest reveals, which started 11 days ago. Let's dive in. Heralds and auras persist through death. After dying, you no longer need to reactivate all your skills which reserve mana. They will just still be on and reserving mana. There's nothing complicated here. It's just a welcome change for anyone that's played the game longer than 20 hours. The Harvest League mechanic used to require you to click twice to begin each fight, once to select the plot you wanted and the second time to confirm. That has now been streamlined into a single click. Again, nothing complicated here, just nice to have. Waypoints throughout the campaign used to require walking all the way over to it and manually clicking to activate. Now they will automatically activate based on proximity. No need to stop. The teaser video makes it look like you need to be about 4 character lengths away, give or take, and the waypoint will automatically light up, becoming available to teleport to from then on. Now on to one of the more complex changes. Applying quality to items is changing in 2 ways. First, applying quality to armor or weapons used to provide a % increased amount of either the item's base defenses, like armor or evasion, or a % increased of the flat damage on a weapon, respectively. This % increase is being changed to be a more multiplier instead. This constitutes a substantial buff because weapons and armor frequently already have stats on them which grant % increases, so applying quality was often just a drop in the bucket of increased damage or defenses. It had diminishing returns, in other words. So qualitying up an item with a 20% increase when that item already had a 100% increased mod on it, well, it's definitely an improvement, but it's marginal. And the better the item is, the more marginal the improvement. So going from 250% to 270% is actually a very small difference in the total end result damage or defense on the item. Nowadays, though, it's going to be 20% more, meaning that 20% doesn't get added to the 100% or to the 250%, it multiplies it instead. So to give a low-level example, if a weapon has 30 average damage, and a 100% increased damage modifier on the weapon, that weapon will wind up with 60 damage. Under the old quality system, where the quality just takes it from 100% increased to 120% increased, the damage would only go up from 60 to 66. Under the new system, however, that 100% increased damage mod will initially take the damage from 30 to 60, but then on top of that, the 20% more from quality will take it up to 72 instead. This is a noticeable buff which will get even more impactful with higher level weapons and armors. The second change to quality is to make it more attractive to use early on. Under the current system, applying quality currencies like blacksmith's whetstones or armorer's scraps would apply a certain amount of quality to an item based on the rarity of that item. For example, for armor items, 5% quality would be applied per scrap if it is a normal white item. It would be only 2% quality applied per scrap if it is a blue magic item, and only 1% per scrap for rare and unique items, all with a maximum of 20 quality under normal circumstances. This means that even in a best-case scenario where you start with a white item, you would need at least 4 of a quality currency to get it to the max of 20%. And of course, you're frequently not going to be working with normal items. You're going to be working with rare items that you find on the ground, and you don't want to scour them first. So this was pretty rough prior to around Act 4 or 5 at a minimum, since those quality currencies, they drop pretty rarely early on in the campaign, and they only escalate in drop rate later. So in effect, it meant that you would almost never use a quality currency for its intended purpose in the first half of the campaign, or often even longer. This has now been changed so that the number or the amount of quality applied is based on the item level rather than the item rarity. Now, they haven't given us yet exact item level numbers, but, quote, very low level equipment will jump straight to 20% quality from a single currency use, and then that rate will gradually fall off as the item level gets higher until if you find an item at max item level 83 plus, it will be at a ratio of 1-to-1. Unique items will still require that 1-to-1 ratio, one currency per quality at all levels, so they will always still require 20 of a quality currency to get it to maximum. Chisels applying quality to maps will work similarly, ignoring the rarity of the item and focusing on the area level that the map item represents. White maps, aka low-tier maps, will jump up to 20% quality instantly with one chisel. Yellow mid-tier maps will have 10% quality applied per chisel, and red or high-tier maps apply only 5% per chisel, which is still better than applying chisels to any rare map under the previous system. Now, there is an important note here. The more multiplier change does not apply to chisels on maps. They are still only increasing item quantity in the maps, not multiplying it. That might have been a little silly. Next up, bosses will now have large permanent life bars which show at the top of the screen. It's unclear how many bosses will get this treatment in the long run, but they are starting with campaign act bosses and endgame pinnacle bosses. We've also seen the health bar shown for Kosis and Omniphobia during a Simulacrum tease. As a bit of speculation, I think that leaves the possibility for in the future, or perhaps even by the time the League launches, that Delve bosses, Breach Lords, Katarina, and other similar tier boss characters could get health bars. Maybe even map bosses too, who knows? Item pickup range has been substantially increased for mouse and keyboard users. It's a very noticeable difference too. If you've played on console or Steam Deck, prepare for that pickup range to apply to mouse too. This is a very welcome improvement, and I suspect people will be raving about it on League Start once they experience it. I think some people maybe have become numb to how precise and tedious loot clicking is in the current state of the game, and this should make it feel much, much better. A new Blight Oil is being introduced, the Prismatic Oil. This oil has not yet been announced to have any effects on blighted maps or rings, but any amulet or other blight item that can be anointed with a passive skill can benefit from a Prismatic Oil. This oil will now be responsible for anointing those special passives that do not appear on the normal passive tree, aka anoint-only passives. The current anoint-only passives will have their recipes changed to include a Prismatic Oil, and several new anoint-only passives are being introduced. The map device can now have a 6th slot. Previously, your map device would start with 4 slots and then upgrade to have a 5th to fit more scarabs or fragments upon completing your first Legion 4-way encounter. Last League in 3.24, this was updated to only unlock upon completing one of the new Tier 17 maps. Now, a 6th slot has been added, which can be accessed when you complete a Maven 10-way invitation by progressing her little quest line. You can do the Tier 17 map and or the Maven questline in either order and unlock the slots one at a time. The teaser was actually a little unclear about this, and they have clarified it after the fact. They unlock one at a time, not both at once. So you do have to do both of these things if you want all 6 map slots. You can do them in either order, but most players will probably do the Maven invite first since it is easier, more accessible content. That 6th slot is likely to have at least some marginal effect on how we construct endgame farming strategies, and in some cases it may make it more attractive to include more than one major mechanic in your strategy rather than focusing all on one, but we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. The rewards for your choice in the Bandit quest in Act 2 of the campaign are being changed in several ways. First, the option to kill all bandits and receive 2 skill points will now only award one of those points, while the second one has been offloaded to one of the Act 2 side quests, keeping the total number of possible skill points in the game the same. This is being done to make other choices more attractive by only giving up 1 skill point instead of giving up 2 to gain their effects. Second, each bandit is being streamlined and changed to be balanced against only a single point. So Oak used to give 1% life regen, 2% physical damage reduction, and 20% increased physical damage. That's all gone now, and instead, he gives a flat 40 to your base life. This is actually quite potent early on when your base life is low, and even later on, it remains on par with the popular Life Mastery, which gives a flat 50 to life for 1 skill point. Remember, you can get well over 100% increased life from your skill tree and your gear, so a flat 40 base amount winds up being more noticeable after it gets multiplied. Creighton, meanwhile, used to give 6% attack and cast speed, 10% chance to avoid elemental ailments, and 6% movement speed. He will now just grant a slightly higher version of the movement speed bonus, 8% instead of 6%. The other effects are gone. This modest increase of his most notable effect, arguably, combined with the fact that you only give up 1 skill point to get it instead of 2, will likely lead to many people choosing this option, at least early on before respeccing, particularly for characters who don't have a lot of movement speed built into their ascendancy. Finally, Alira used to grant a flat 5 mana regen per second, 15% critical strike multiplier, and 15% to all elemental resistances. She used to be realistically the only option anyone would choose aside from the 2 skill points, and as a result, she is taking a direct nerf to account for the fact that you're now only giving up that 1 skill point instead of 2. She now only has the 15% to all elemental resistances. The mana regen and crit multi have been eliminated. Overall, regarding this change, my guess is that at first there will be a lot more parity in terms of what people choose as compared to before, when 97% of builds would choose the skill points. But I think that as days and weeks go by and gear improves, I think gradually most people will respec to get the second skill point, with maybe a few people choosing to keep the life or the movement speed. But I predict that very few will keep the resistances into deep endgame because of how accustomed we are to being able to get those things on our gear. Moving on, the Simulacrum has apparently had its number of waves cut in half. The Simulacrum is the endgame content associated with Delirium League, and it involves 30 waves of enemies in escalating difficulty. The problem was that previously, the first 15 of those waves were enemies far weaker than what you would have needed to fight just to get access to Simulacrum in the first place. To add insult to injury, they rarely gave any considerable rewards. So the result was the mostly universal feeling that the first 15 waves were a boring slog that you had to sit through before getting to the real content. In the upcoming patch, GGG have simply removed the first 15 waves. Additionally, they have improved drop rates of unique delirium jewels such as Megalomaniac and Voices, though we don't have numbers for how common they will be yet. We'll have to experiment. Regardless, this will make a Simulacrum a much more attractive farming option again, so content creator Zen M should be thrilled, one of his primary go-to strategies, and also it should make Delirium in maps more attractive to build and sell those Simulacrum entry tokens. The next teaser revealed that hovering over a map on your atlas will now show which divination cards can drop in that map, at least the divination cards which aren't in the general drop anywhere pool. Some cards can only drop in a few specific maps, and now a map will show you which of those cards can drop in it. And the most recent teaser, as of the recording of this video, is that Valdo's puzzle boxes, which contain random, difficult Tier 17 maps which reward various unique items, have had their drop rates changed. More of these boxes will drop, but high rarity items like Mage Blood will appear less frequently as rewards to compensate for the increased drop rate of the boxes. Along with that, we also learned that, to nobody's surprise, the Necropolis League mechanic from patch 3.24 will not be going core in any way. Most of the uniques from it will be added to the core drop pool, but Parandus Pact will not be. We have no further news on that. However, throughout all these teaser posts, there have been some hidden secondary teasers and easily inferred knock-on effects of the main teasers. Things that weren't spoken out loud, but just quietly shown or implied. We have seen several divination cards get moved or removed from specific maps, including, notably, the lack of the Doctor card in Burial Chambers, where it was iconically featured. It is unclear if it is gone, moved, or now in the general drop pool. We'll have to wait and see. We also saw new high-tier armor base types with higher flat values of their defensive mechanic, like Armor Evasion Energy Shield. This, combined with a nerf of the flat values provided by defensive auras, seems to be intended to shift the balance of defensive power to gear instead of skill gems. So this might end up constituting a short or even long-term defensive nerf for some builds. We also saw a new or changed life modifier on boots, which seems to allow for higher total values of life than are currently possible on that gear slot, but we have no details about exactly how this works yet. But there have been a series of other subtle teases that all seem to orbit around a single theme, a sizable melee rework or shakeup. Every single video release so far has included at least one dead totem lying on the ground. This almost certainly alludes to an extremely long-standing request from players that GGG remove so much of Melee's power from totems and shift it back to the player in some other way. If you're unaware, using Ancestral Protector Totem for attack speed and Ancestral Warchief Totem for attack damage is effectively mandatory for melee builds, and this winds up being extremely clunky. The totems die quickly, they are immobile, they have limited range, and resummoning them takes time away from attacking and leeching. Showing these dead totems in every video, combined with conspicuously showing several melee builds not using totems, has all but confirmed some kind of major rework to that system, whether that be simply offloading their power to skill gems or weapons, or some kind of middle-of-the-road option which lets you obtain those buffs in some smoother or more permanent way while still using the totem gems, maybe some kind of new support gem in the vein of automation or call to arms. Taken together with some other sly teasers like Bleed Lacerate being used, and with a crit flask for some reason, that's interesting, and some other apparent changes to Rage, War Cries, and perhaps even Slams, these all seem to be hinting at a broad, multi-pronged overhaul to the entire Melee experience. Now, as a massive fan of Melee myself, I am holding my breath in anticipation here, and if the patch notes look promising enough on Thursday, then there is a strong chance that I change my League start plans to be a Melee character instead, which I don't think I've done since, patch 3.13 Ritual, I think might have been the last time. But in any case, that is all for the teasers and hidden hints which have released so far. But let me know in the comments if I missed anything or if you have any questions. And then be sure to check back later today or tomorrow when I edit in those final pre-patch teasers that they're going to show. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in and take it easy.